Hey there drone fans, Rick here again from Drone Valley. In today's video, I'd like to try and answer a question that we get an awful lot on the channel, especially from flyers that are new to the hobby. And it's a simple question, but it has a diabolically complicated answer, and I'll try to give you as simple an answer as possible, but honestly it depends. And I'll get into all that in a minute, but the question is, can I fly over my neighbor's property? Now I've named this clip Pilot or Pervert. And I really feel that that's appropriate. I wanted to get your attention to sort of foster a conversation around this, but I named it that on purpose because I really feel like those are two sides of the same coin. If you're a flyer and you're a decent pilot, you're a pilot, and your only interest is putting a drone up, filming a house for commercial reasons, or maybe you've got to fly over your neighbor's property to get to a target that you'd like to film. So as a pilot, if you're responsible, you understand exactly what the limits of the drone are, you're going to be courteous to your neighbors, and you're not going to be that guy that's creepy that's hanging out over the pool. But if you're a consumer, drones are a new thing. They're relatively new, even though we all know about them. The consumer out there, on average, doesn't really understand drones. All they know about drones are this politically charged term where, we're sending drones in Afghanistan, or we're taking out terrorist cells, or, this horrible situation in Ukraine right now where Ukraine and Russia are both dropping hand grenades on each other. So it's got a bad connotation to it. So if you're a consumer and you're out back in your yard, you're in the pool with the kids, your wife's on the lounge chair, and a drone shows up and it's hovering over your backyard for a period of time, you might look up at that and think, I don't really trust that thing. I know it's got a camera on it. I know somebody's flying it. And right away you're thinking there's a creepy guy somewhere or a creepy girl somewhere at the remote controls of that drone doing nefarious things. So I understand that divide between the public and the pilot, right? That pervert and the pilot, because just like if somebody walked in front of your house and stood on the sidewalk and stared into your backyard for 25 minutes. Like, you would want to go out there and talk to him and say, what gives? We're trying to enjoy a little football toss in the backyard. Can I help you with something? It's the same with the drone up in the sky. It's just that it's 30 feet or 60 feet up in the air. So I want to talk a little bit about what the legal landscape looks like. I'm not an attorney, but I've done a lot of research on this. I've been flying for a ton of years. I talk with a lot of other pilots, and there's sort of a consensus out there about the best behavior with flying a drone over somebody's property, because quite honestly, you really can't avoid it. And by the way, you do have the right to fly over your neighbor's property, and I'll get into why in a minute, but you can't avoid it. If you're a commercial pilot and you're filming a home, you already know that to get the perspective you need of that home, you're gonna have to pull back far enough where you're absolutely gonna violate the boundaries of somebody else's property to get that shot. It's gonna be temporary, but it's gonna be fairly low. So anybody in that house is gonna see the drone and think, what's going on at my backyard? There's a drone upstairs. So you gotta be aware of that. So it's not something you can really avoid, but there are some things you can keep in mind when you're flying over somebody else's property that'll keep you out of trouble and probably keep those hassles to a minimum. So I wanted to start off with sort of the legal landscape, or the evolving legal landscape of what is technically legal, if you will. So if we go way back in time to the beginning of time here in the United States when we were settling property, if you bought a plot of land, you owned everything that land encompassed, all the way from the heavens, and this is written in the law, from the heavens to the depths of hell. So if you dug deep enough and you found oil, you found gold, you were a rich person. If you decided you wanted to build a building 600 feet in the air, and you could do that at the time, you could build it as high as you want. Well, as laws came into place and communities sprung up and local town councils got involved, all of a sudden they limited how high you can build a building. You may or may not own the mineral rights under your property, so it all depends on what your legal status is with the property you own. But what got interesting was, how much of the airspace above my house do I own? That's the question we're really trying to answer here. And initially you owned it all. But then the FAA came along, because we invented the airplane, right? People wanted to fly airplanes from point A to point B. They can't really do that without flying over somebody's property. So the FAA established rules that said airplanes have to be a minimum of 500 feet above the ground, AGL, or they had to be typically 1,000 feet or higher. Now most commercial airliners are up there 10, 20, 30,000 feet, so they're not bothering you. You look up, you see the plane, you give them a little wave, not a big deal. So they're not really close to Earth. What really made it complicated, though, is when drones were invented, because people like me have to fly under 400 feet to be within the FAA regulations. So I'm a lot closer to the ground, I'm a lot more visible, I'm a lot more noisy than airplanes would be, and that's where the hassle starts, where people look at it and go, oh, you can't fly over my property. I'm gonna get the shotgun. Don't do that. You can't shoot a drone down. A lot of people think they can defend their property with a gun. You can't do that. I mean, that's an FAA certified product or an FAA approved product. It's essentially the same as an airplane. So if you start shooting at a drone, you're gonna be in a whole lot of trouble. But anyway, back to the legal side of it. The problem was, how do you define how much of the airspace you actually own? Now, there was an interesting court case back in 1946, I think it was, where a farmer had a big chicken ranch. And next to the chicken ranch was a military facility. So airplanes were leaving, they were landing, they were leaving, they were landing. And I guess a couple of the pilots got a little bit goofy in kind of a Top Gun fashion and flew really low over this farmer's field, over his chicken coops. And that vibration from the engines and the noise, I guess, drove the chickens crazy, and they started flying into the walls and killing themselves. So the farmer said, "This is ridiculous. I have a chicken farm. You can't be flying airplanes over my chicken coop, scaring my chickens to death. Who's going to pay for all my chickens?" So he went to court. And the court case was the United States versus Cosby, I think it was, or Cosby versus the US, where he tried to sue the federal government to say, "I don't want planes flying over my house." That's a bit of a challenge because planes have to fly where planes fly. Now, there are certain highways in the air that they kind of adhere to, but with military helicopters and jets and things, they're going to fly where they need to fly to keep us safe. So anyway, that case was settled. I think it was 83 feet was the exact metric where they said, you know what, you've got a point. If those jets get below 83 feet, they're going to really affect those chickens. If they stay above 83 feet, you're going to be fine. I don't know how they found a scientist or an expert to say 83 feet's the exact distance they need to be away from the chickens. But anyway, 83 feet was the number they established. So that's kind of the understood handshake, if you will, of how low you can actually go over somebody's property. Now, I would never go that low. I would stay well above that, but 83 feet is about it. Since then, though, I have to be telling you about a group that is scaring the bejesus out of me, because they're a group of lawyers called the Uniform Legal Council, or Legal Commission it is. And essentially what they are is a group of lawyers that look at evolving standards in our society, and they get together and say, you know what, we need to put a law on the books about this, right? And this whole violation of airspace with drones is something that's caught the public's attention. So this group got together and they put together a draft, if you will, that towns can adopt around aerial trespass. That's the term they were using. And what they said there in that draft, which hasn't been picked up by anybody that I know of at this point, but the draft is scary, the first draft at least, it said if you're flying a drone and you cross the boundary of a property by even a foot, you immediately can be sued by that property owner, which seemed ridiculous because, again, I'm not violating their airspace, I'm flying over the property to get to my target. But that was the first draft. Now they've changed it to say if you're hovering over somebody's property for an extended period of time and you're interfering with their ability to enjoy their property, then you can sue them. Now I agree with that. It's like I said, if the drone shows up at 5 o'clock in the afternoon every day when I'm in the pool with the kids, I'm upset about that drone. I want to know who's flying it, and I want to go have a talk with them politely to say, stop flying a drone over my backyard. What are you doing in my backyard with a drone? So, and again, I'm going to do a whole other clip on this one, but remote ID is going to help a little with that, because I'll pop out my phone, I'll figure out what the remote ID is, it's their license plate, I can then hand that to the police, they can go off and do their investigation and go talk to that knucklehead about flying in my backyard. But anyway, back to the rules. So today, and this is nationwide, as far as I know, now some states are getting a little more aggressive with this, you have every right to fly over somebody's property on your way to a target or filming a home. Now, again, it gets tricky when I do homes, I do commercial real estate photography. I'll look at the neighbors that I may have to fly over their homes, and I may, if they're outside, I'll certainly go talk to them. I wear a high-vis vest, so I'm easy to identify. So if somebody's got a problem with a drone flying, they see the vis vest, they can come over and talk to me. I keep a business card handy. And my routine answer is typically, I'm only going to be here for less than 30 minutes. Here's my business card. If you want, I'm more than happy to snap some shots of your home from above so you get a beautiful picture of what your home looks like with your landscaping and everything in it. And most people are thrilled to have that opportunity. Just email me and I'll send you the picture. So that seems to diffuse the situation. But anyway, back to flying over it for fun. You can do it, but the trick is, how are you doing it? And that's where the pilot and pervert comes in, right? Because if you're flying over the property and you're high enough up and you're flying fast, chances are they're not even going to notice you're up there. But if you're hovering over the property, that's when you start moving into that pervert category where, why are you hovering over the property? If you're filming a home, that's one thing, but flying over somebody's property and hanging out just to see what's going on back there, or checking out what the guy's doing with the shed, or maybe his grass has got some brown spots, I want to take a look at that, that's not good. That's a really bad situation. Again, no different than standing at the curb and staring through a window at a house. I mean, they're going to come out and talk to you. So my recommendation is, and this is the easiest way to solve this problem, if you have a neighbor that you're going to fly over their property routinely, just have a conversation with them and say, look, I fly over the lake. I love taking shots out there over the lake at sunset. Your property's between me and the lake. I may occasionally fly over your property. Is that okay with you? Most neighbors are like, sure, I don't care. Just, have fun with your drone. The other thing I would say is that the 3 rules I fly by: don't hover. If you're flying someplace, know where you're flying, get your coordinates in line, and fly there directly. Make as straight a line as possible. Of course, you've got to look on the ground to see if there are people below you. Don't fly over people. If there are people in a yard, I'll find another way to it, but know where you're heading, fly there directly. The second thing is fly fast. Don't slow down. Don't hover. Don't point the camera down. Just fly to your destination, do what you're going to do, and then fly back to your takeoff point. And the third thing, and this is super important, fly as high as you can. You can go up to 400 feet. And with a drone like the Mini 3 Pro or the Air 2S, they're noisy under 100 feet. People are going to notice them. They're going to want to talk to you about them. You get up to 200 feet, the drone is virtually invisible. It's undetectable from a noise perspective, so no one even knows you're up there. So if you want to minimize the hassle, fly directly, fly fast, and fly high. But for all intents and purposes, the one rule you got to pay attention to is don't hover. Don't hover over somebody's property, because that's when you're moving clearly from a pilot to the pervert category. That's when you're in that creepy guy category where I got to wonder myself, why are you hovering over my property? So those are the hard and fast rules I fly by. And again, I know there are evolving standards in all the states. I've heard some states are starting to look into that aerial trespass law. I'm lucky I live in New Jersey. We're a pretty easygoing state. There isn't any of those limitations here, but I am again respectful of property boundaries, especially respectful of property owner rights. But we have rights as pilots as well. And if we're allowed to fly there because the FAA says we can fly there, I'm going to fly there. And I'm not going to do it to make you mad. And if we get into a situation where you're not happy about it, I'll find another way to get that shot at the lake. But by and large, my experience over the years I've been flying has been incredibly positive. There's only been a few instances where I've had somebody that was so upset and so angry and so belligerent that they were right, that I just thought, you know what? The more I talk to you and argue about what you want, is less time I can fly my drone. And I'm really here to have fun with my drone. So let's just shake on this one. I'll go fly somewhere else today, and I just give up on it. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. So hopefully this answered the question for you. Yes, you can fly over your neighbor's property. Keep the drone as high as you can, as fast as you can, and as direct as you can to your target, and you won't have any issues whatsoever. So hopefully you found this helpful. I've thought about this a lot, and I'm going to start doing more of these clips where I'm sort of exploring things like beyond visual line of sight flight. You know, can I do other things in the spare space? Can I fly at night? You know, all the other things that are going on, remote ID. I'll touch on all those topics on the channel. But please drop your comments below, because I really do care about what you think. And if you've got opinions that are different than mine, drop them down below, because one of the reasons I started the channel was to foster these conversations, because that way we all get smarter together. So I'm by no means an expert in any of this tech, but I've been flying long enough and got a lot of common sense and deal with a lot of other pilots on a regular basis that this is kind of where the body of opinion is today. So thanks an awful lot for watching. If you have questions on anything around drones or other high-tech stuff, drop those in the comments below and I'll get back to you. And that's pretty much it. So thanks an awful lot for watching. And until next time, as always, happy flying.